Hello and good morning. Very welcome to this first session today after our Film Impact Lab yesterday. My name is Anna Ramskog-Lavit and I have the pleasure to welcoming Peter Drössler next to me today. This session, just for you to know, is live streamed on YouTube, but you're still very welcome to ask questions in between. It's more meant as an open conversation than like just the two of us talking. I know Peter since 2008, so for quite some time, as we have worked together for distribution in Vienna. And Peter, back then you supported POOOL Filmverleih, that's how the distribution was called, in finding audiences for documentary films, and later on you led the distribution and then you became a producer. Do you, maybe from your side, want to introduce yourself a little bit, how you came from NGO work to film work?
Thank you for the presentation. Well, I started as activist. I was a spokesperson for the biggest Austrian environmental association in the 90s, and then started to run the business as PR consultant afterwards. And I was all my life always politically active. We founded a green group in the Chamber of Commerce in Austria, and by accident I was in the branch for commercial communication, advertisement and so on, as press consultant. And a colleague was in the film business, and we had the office in the same street in Vienna. We met by accident for lunch sometimes, and we started to talk about the work for the releases from film, and I just asked during lunch, why don't you do anything like cross marketing? Why don't you target your audiences better in a way? And so he asked me if I would support launch, a theatrical release of a film. It was my first work for film business. It was in 2006. It was quite successful.
It was about water, right?
It was about water, filmed by, I forgot the name.
Udo.
Udo Maurer, yeah. A very, very nice film. It would be very actual indeed today. It was a first film, or it was a film about climate change in 2006, long before the international discussion started, as it is actually now. Well, and we were the third best film in box offices that year, and so I got more and more clients from film business, and it was like catching a virus. Once I started with film business, I never could stop again.
I completely understand that the same film company drew me from art history into the documentary scene. They are very good at that, also in producing films. So coming back to this very early years in Vienna, working with film distribution, I know About Water was really successful, but also other films. What was your approach to cross-marketing, finding new audiences within that period of time? I remember About Water had, I think, at least 20,000 pupils in the cinema.
About that, yeah. I always tried to find an organizational basis partner, like environmental NGOs, for instance, who are already in touch with their groups, with their businesses, who have established means of media, a newsletter, magazines, whatever. At that time, it was a lot of printed communication still in 2006. Social media has not been invented at that time, so a lot of printed newsletter was very important, therefore, to start early, because you have to think always also the planning periods they need to organize their things. So if you start just 2 weeks before or 2 months before the theatrical release, it's much too late. You have to start half a year earlier, and this is, I think, the secret of success. You have to think in the planning periods of your partners and be in time when they find their decision, when they are establishing their programs, and then they have to know about the film and your plans, and then you can work together and partner up, and then it is working well.
But is half a year even long enough for that? Because if I think of the NGOs I've been working for or with, they have this like 3-year plan, 2-year plan, and then an annual plan where they plan their campaigns very thoroughly.
The sooner the better. I also try to establish long-term relations with partners. I very often work with them again together, and it's a two-way communication. And I also try to consult then I'm not now in film communication anymore. I'm a producer myself, but. In fact, building audiences starts when you start to design a film, when you start to plan a film, and you should start to think about that from the very beginning. When you start shooting, you can already think about who could be the partner later on for the release. The sooner you start, the more chances for success you have.
So one of the latest films you have produced was The Last Ambassador. Mm-hmm. I was in that film, and also with how did this experience from coming from the PR side feed into the way you started the production? And did you, as a production company, look from the very start on for partners, or was that something that you like directed to the film release or to the distributor?
With The Last Ambassador, it was a very mixed development. So Last Ambassador is a film about the only still acting female ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Manisha Bakhtari. She is ambassador for a country in Vienna, in Austria, representing Afghanistan at the UN in Vienna, at the OECD, and the Republic of Austria, against the will of the Taliban. She was appointed in this position in April 21, and in August 21 it was the takeover in Kabul, and she just continued with her work. And the director saw her in a TV interview and was very impressed, and she just took a camera and started to film with her. And a couple of months later, I think 3 months later, the director came to our office and showed us the material she had shot. And she was running out of money and was searching for help. And then we thought, this is an interesting story. At that time, we had no idea how long it would last, if she would be in this position for another 2 weeks or months or whatever. Now it's almost 5 years later. She's still acting as ambassador. And so we could raise additional money, and we started to do this project together. And we had the lucky situation that the process of conferences of various groups of the opposition of Afghanistan they're always meeting in Vienna at the Bruno Kreisky Forum, a political think tank in Vienna, and they host their conferences there, and so we were also involved with this political think tank. And now, meanwhile, I'm meeting regularly with the director of the think tank for other projects as well, and so one project is leading to the next.
How important is in the approach you're taking networking, and where do you see like the responsibility of building those ideas for audiences? Is that more with the production or also the director, or does it come in later with the distribution plan then, and how can it go hand in hand?
Well, I see myself as mainly as a political activist who is producing films. So I'm not only running this network only to promote a film. This is my life. Yeah, I'm trying to do actions, to run campaigns, to support others with all my capacity I have. And one major topic I can contribute is producing films on this topic. So for me and from my position, it's very naturally that this works together within the network of human rights, environment, empowerment, feminism, and so on. These are the topics I'm active. And then every film is different. Every film has a completely different crew, different motivation, different directors, and then it's always important to find appropriate strategy for each film, and then this can vary very much. And it's also different if you do it for TV or if you do it as a theatrical film for cinemas, and so these are different topics then.
So if we are at the very start of the film, because you said you start looking at audience, who is the audience at the very beginning, how is there a process you have established, or how do you find out the audiences that you want to reach through the film you're producing?
This is something we need to do together. For instance, again, the impact producer I finally worked with for The Last Ambassador, we started to work together. She was a translator during the editing process of the film. We found her because she was a friend of the ambassador. We were searching for somebody who could translate the material shot in Dari. She could help us, and then it turned out she is also president of the exile group of Afghanistan in Austria, and she is a political advocate, and in fact she's a brilliant young woman. And then we worked together, and she was as impact producer at the end, not only translating the material we shot, she was organizing events in Washington DC, in New York, in London, and in New Delhi for us.
Wow. You have been involved or producing the film. Now I have a placard. We have to survive.
We have to survive. Yeah, it's tomorrow evening.
Yeah. How was? It's an environmental film, so it comes from your really back roots. How was the process around that film?
It's completely different. This is a 3-country co-production, and in this case we are the smallest company, so we are only involved with 20%. Its lead producer is Thomas Krupa from Slovakia, and then is Christian Bob from France, and I'm the smallest part. We are not so much involved in the international release of the film, and the film will have no theatrical release in Austria because it's funded with the TV fund, and it will be pretty soon screened on TV, so we will have no theatrical campaign in this case, and this is why it's a completely different story with We Have to Survive. We try to organize some special screenings to launch at least, or to partner up and have some Q&As with the film before it's on TV.
How is the difference in thinking about audiences and producing cinema versus TV films? And how much can you campaign with a TV film?
From the situation in Austria, it's very different because we have everything is produced with public funding, more or less, in Austria, and we have TV funding as well. And the big difference is if we have funding from the Film Fund or from the Ministry of Culture, then there's a secured period where the film must not be screened on TV. It's for free TV is 18 months after the theatrical release, and this is a time where we can work and go with the film, make special screenings, Q&As, and work with the film in special audiences. If it's TV funding, in this time the film is now ready. Yeah, we are still working on we need to make a German voiceover in this case because Austrian TV. This is not ready yet. We will have the final film maybe next week or mid-June. And the theatrical or the festival premiere was in Thessaloniki in April. Now it's running here. It was in Munich. But we will not have a festival in Austria because the timing was not very lucky for this. The window where we had the opportunity to show the film before the TV release was very, very short, and the interesting festivals were either too early or too late in this very narrow window, so we have not much chances to release the film beside the TV release in Austria.
The title is How Documentaries Find Their Audiences. Now, what I see is that sometimes there needs to be translation between organizations, NGOs, foundations, and filmmakers because the approach is very differently. So if you say, okay, I have a film about an environmental issue and I want to work with this organization because they might have a cue into the audience that I would like to reach, what recommendations would you give to talk with the organizations? What do we need as a film people have in mind in order to like make them efficient for reach out for the film?
Well, the first step in good communication is always listening. Yeah, I don't run around it like a radio and say, this is my film, it's interesting, please show it to your audiences. The first thing is I search on the website or in personal communication, and I listen. I'm looking, what are they talking about, what are the problems they are working on, and so on. And then I'm searching where are the, I would call it touch points, where the film we have is addressing problems they actually talking about, maybe in a different context, but something where I think I can show them that my film is helping them to solve their problem or to address their problem, and then we can design the Q&As together and show the film, and then have an expert who's bridging the gap to the actual situation then in the environment where we are showing the film. And this is a concept that usually works very well. Also not as good with in the same way with each film, but in general the strategy is what works best.
So before I ask more questions, are there questions from the audience? Very happy to involve. Wait, I come back to you.
Hi, thank you. Well, I work in the same topics, and I just wanted to give a tip to how to get some funding from NGOs. Also, NGOs need to plan their fundings for next year around October, November. So it's always good to contact them in September, October, November, because it's the moment that they are already planning the next year. So if you go with your film, maybe it's good to go on those dates. Yeah.
Yeah, that's also something that I've been seeing, that you need to be very early. How is your experience in getting funding from organizations for films and campaigns?
The low-key approach, when there's no extra funding, it is that we partner up and we let the audience fund it. They bring the audiences, and everybody who is coming to this evening has to pay the screening fee and the cinema, and this is working quite well. Yeah. Because people are used that they pay for the entrance when they go to cinema, so you don't always have to invite everybody. If it's interesting, the people are willing to pay. That is something you can also organize in a quite short term. One good experience, there's a platform you funded, and we had good experience. We used it in a different way. I'm thinking about to use it maybe in future to support our work as well. A platform called Share Talks. I don't know, maybe some of you know them. It's very easy at the end. We just used it at the end of the credit roll in cinemas of Last Ambassador. We put the QR code scannable with the mobile phone, and this was for the last 2 minutes on screen when the people are still in the mood of just having seen the film, and when they are leaving they can scan the code. It's leading them to a website, Share Talks, where the film is presented. It's in I think in 8 different languages or so, or 5, I can't even remember. And then it's very easy there to support the film. In our case, we used it to support Afghan girls to get supported in secret schools in Afghanistan, and we didn't have no promotion for this platform by any other means, no printed material, nothing, not even on the website. It was only at the end of the film we raised almost 20,000 euro in this way.
I think you also referenced to like getting NGOs involved in the post-production, like actually supporting the film with money. Mm-hmm. Have you done that in the past, or was it just for the release of the film?
We are in the lucky situation that we can include some starting costs for such campaigns in our budgets at the funds, up to an amount of about 10,000 euros. And we have some extra support then once the film is released, so we could apply again for about 10,000 euros. There is a crisis now in the funding system. I did not get, for instance, the money for impact producing for Last Ambassador. This was a special situation because an automatic funding scheme had to stop from one day to the other last year in Austria. And I applied I think in January for one film, and I got this money, and in February I applied for Last Ambassador, and they said, sorry, if impact producing is not our business, we can't fund this project anymore. So, but for this, we were not in the need to do any fundraising or seed financing or crowdfunding for such campaigns. But I think this will be the future, to do crowdfunding in thematical environments for these films.
But I, for example, remember that with About Water, we had the Wiener Wasserbetriebe, the Vienna water supplier, as a sponsor on board. To pay for school tickets as well, and in other instances, the Long Road to Mecca, there was also a foundation giving money for the theatrical release. In that sense, did you ever think about including funds from NGOs or funds from foundations in the production process of the film, like to close production gaps?
In production funds, this is very complicated, for various reasons. At the moment, so most important reason, I'm now finishing a film. We are in the last phase of post-production, and I hopefully will soon has a release, a documentary which was originally planned to be finished in 2021. But a lot of things happened during the production process. We needed longer, and so we have 5 years delay, and no partner from the NGO scene would be willing to accompany you on such a long period. And most of the films I'm producing are not ready in time. It's always normal that there is some delay, and even if everything is running very well from the starting, in Austria we have the system when we apply for funding, we have to apply before the first day of shooting, and we have to submit a budget until completion. So this is a very long-term planning, which is normally a process. It's minimum 2-3 years, sometimes longer. And so the period adjust is completely different as an NGO works. No NGO is making now a budget for 2030, for instance. Yeah? So you have to find a different approach. But when you are in rough cut stage, then we start to make the planning concrete for the release, and then we start to talk then with the partners.
There's another question.
Hi, how would you balance like the things the public television companies would mandate in order to separate like funding from an NGO with their journalistic independence? Like, how would you balance this?
It's an important issue. It has to be very, very transparent. Most public TV companies have very clear compliance rules that if you accept from any partner private funding, if it's an NGO, if it would be a company, it could violate the rules they have, that they are not allowed to accept any private, or it has to be addressed in the screening. So you have to be very careful how you deal with that. And this is also a reason why I prefer not to include any funding in the production budget. Also for artistic freedom, if I have private investors, and even if the private investor would be Greenpeace, yeah, but I want to make the film independent from any distribution ideology or targets. It should be, the film should be produced independently on artistic, with artistic freedom. So everything afterwards can be addressed separately, and so I prefer that. In some cases it might be necessary. We had projects, not myself, but friends of mine, where it was very important to work together. For instance, in that case, it was Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, and they were included because it was not possible to get access to some protagonists without this organization, and then it's something different, but this is then also very transparent from the very beginning.
I'm going to challenge you a tiny bit on that, because what we see, or what I see or hear from many filmmakers, is the funding is harder and harder to get. There's less and less money out there, and what I hear is that we need to get creative about, like, where the funds for the shooting comes from. So don't you think there could be a way to find agreements with, for example, in particular, foundations?
I think, yes, we will have to work on that. Maybe the future will be that maybe we or one idea would be that we have to establish new funds, so that it would work like a levy, that the various NGOs together fund a new fund for supporting films on an area. I would prefer to have it not so directly. I don't want to make a film who could be seen as a promotion video for a company, for an NGO or something like that, but we need to be creative in the way we will fund films. We need to live more solidarity between I would say, the democratic forces in our society, if NGO, if think tanks, if parties, if companies whatsoever, we have to organize, because the move to the right and the centralism of bringing everything together in small companies, the actual merger in USA is a big threat for documentary industry, if you follow the news. So HBO could be a stop as fund for documentaries. Discovery could disappear from the scene of a couple of very important public funders of documentaries in the US, just cancelled their programs in the last 3-4 years. So it's not only the funding institutions in Europe who are under threat, the public broadcasters in Europe, all of them are under threat in Switzerland, in Germany, BBC, in Austria, the ORF. Everybody is struggling. They're getting budget cuts, and where can they save the money? In doing the program, because these are the short-term contracts where they're able to save funds. In the long term, it's very hard to be more efficient, because they have long-term contracts for the buildings, for the employees, and so on and so on. But when they are forced, like in Austria, from this year to the next year, that they should save 70 million euro from one year to the next, the only short-term contracts they have is making the program.
Before I ask the audience again, maybe one more question. Do we need to look at similar fields that already have funds and support systems in place? For example, I know journalism, for example, there have been developed over the last few years quite a few funds from organizations, companies, and foundations together to set up, to support independent journalism, because also there, like, the money issue is big. Is that something that, like, the documentary scene needs to be as strategic about it and, like, do better advocacy in a way?
This is a topic we need to investigate more. So on one hand, I think it's important the documentary filmmaker and journalists are working more together, because it's just or put it the other way around. In future, I want, when I'm working on a documentary as producer, that means that I'm working on a topic for, as I said before, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You're building up a community, you have research, you have contact to protagonists, you're getting kind of expert, and at the end we are currently making one documentary film. I want in future to make a documentary film, a podcast, an exhibition, maybe a book, short versions of the film, social media channels and so on, because when you're working on a topic you could also then have multi-channel products, and this will bring us closer to other parts of the industry.
And also closer to the audience, doesn't it?
And closer to the audience. And the second very important part is at the moment in Europe, the European Commission is now preparing the new framework program from 28 to 2034. The media program will be shifted in the so-called Agora EU program. There is planned that there will be a rise of the budget from currently, I think, 2.6 or 2.8 billion euros to 3.6, I think, but not separated for film industry anymore, but film industry will be in the same pot with journalism and gaming. And they're bringing these fields together, and at the moment nobody's knowing how the concrete projects and the procedures will be shaped, how we can apply for funds, but it's more money in general, but maybe at the end less for filming as film.
But if I think back to films where now they were really successful, it's Shadow Games. They have done a podcast around it, they have done social media short clips, they have done everything. And I think, like, would you share the observation that opened their audience and people were just more aware of the film?
I think we will have to do that. For me, documentary filmmaking is not the length of 90 minutes. It's a stance. It's how is my relation as producer, as a filmmaker, to the reality I find out there, or I define, or I produce out there, because it's always a very subjective image of reality we are producing as documentary filmmaker. And I think it would be good to have this stance of for me it's like telling the truth, yeah, and searching what is truth. Yeah, very important in this fake news time, and where everybody just tries to manipulate us, for political reasons, and we need to find and tell the truth, whatever it is, and discuss it and evaluate it and go into the field and discuss it with various target group. And for me, this is a stance. This is how I want to live this life as creative person in an active democracy. And this is documentary filmmaking, and we should try to bring this in other fields of our society as well.
Is there another question from the audience? Feel free, or a thought or a statement? No? Okay. So I think we are going into a really interesting direction, because, I mean, how documentaries find your audience is also about how we communicate about documentaries, and also about a bit how do we use the very tiny budget that we often have. So in that way, with the last films, besides partnerships with NGOs, which were tools or techniques where you said, okay, we did find, we were able to communicate with our audience and raise awareness for the film?
I would say I have two examples, a positive and negative. The positive is, as I said before, find the right partners, team up, bring it to the audience, to the right audiences. What is the quality of the audience? And with the last ambassador, we had screenings for 250 diplomats in Vienna at the very beginning. And the next day we had the questions from the UN in New York. They wanted to show the film as well because these networks of diplomats internationally work in an astonishing way. And then you can reach just with this one event in a small cinema in Vienna. We reached some people on the right spots at the UN in New York because they were talking on their communication channels. And if you manage to bring your film in the right communication networks of the right target groups, it could be fantastic what you can reach. And in fact, with the last ambassador, I would have more chances than I have capacity to organize than, in fact, the event. This is where I reached some limits.
You said you also had a negative example.
Yeah, this was a very disappointing
Learning
experience.
from mistakes.
It was a festival in Doc, New York City. I had last November, 2 films at the festival, and I had big experiences. It's the biggest documentary festival in US, and we came. It
has a beautiful program.
Yeah, it's a beautiful program and so on. And I showed up for the first screening we had an hour earlier, as agreed, to pick up my tickets, and then they wanted to give me such an amount of tickets, and I said, what the hell, what should I do with 50 tickets? I just need our 5. Are you not coming from the office, from the mayor? And so I found out by that they made a deal with the mayor of New York. They bought tickets of the festivals, and the festival thought, okay, tickets sold, we've got the money in our pocket. The mayor thought, okay, we bought the tickets for the festival, we supported the festival as event, mission completed. The tickets were there, nobody used it. Just 2 blocks from the New York University away. If I would have known that before, I would stand myself there and invite students to come to the screenings for free. But nobody did that.
That's a missed chance of bringing audiences to your film, isn't it? Okay, strange. Sorry. Going back in time, we also had together the beautiful film Die Frauenkarawane, Winds of Sense, Women of Rock. And what I thought was interesting there is when we did the audience mapping process, it is a film about the only female caravan who goes through Sahara. The men stay at home, the women go on this journey together with the kids. It's a bit older film, but what I personally learned from that film was looking like the most obvious partner for that was feminist groups. But I remember that we were sitting there mapping out and looking at very different angles of the film, and I think you came up and said at some point, okay, let's go for photography, because that film is so cineastic, it has such great pictures. And then we had a feminist film on a humanitarian issue, more or less, but we reached out to a photo community. So how do you come up with those ideas that are maybe not super close, like the first thought, and how do you design this mapping process of possible audience streams?
This is also, almost every film has various touch points, I would call it, or is in the audience design, it's called touch points. So where what are the characteristic moments in the film, or how could you attract audiences? It could be the cinematography, it could be a thematical narration, it could be a certain protagonist in the film, it could be maybe members of the creative team, and with each of these touch points you could connect to other different groups of organized audiences, I would call it. So for me it's always important then to find a partner, because I cannot build up in a short time a relationship and a trustful communication to specifically organized and interested groups. You always have to find somebody in between, a mediator, an organization in best case, who already has these groups and addresses that to others. Yeah. And yes, cinematography can be a very, very important topic for that, because people are willing to discover completely new topics, themes, stories for them if they are beautifully presented, yeah? If they're interested in photography. So it can bring your audiences, and it can be worth to organize a special screening then to address with these partners the Association for Cinematography, for instance, bring the camera person on the stage for a Q&A after the screening and so on, and it can bring you a full cinema for one evening, for instance, in each country where you're showing the film.
Yeah, I thought back then it was very interesting because the cinemas, it was like directly after Christmas, and it was completely full with hobby photographers. And it was interesting and beautiful and really intense conversations about how to choose the picture, what does it mean. It was also very meaningful in a way. The other thing is we have been talking lots about working with organizations, but if we look on the communication, I remember back then in the Bazaar of Sexes, we did together a campaign. It was a film about time marriage in Iran. So in Iran, you basically can marry from half an hour to 99 years. You decide up front how long the marriage will last. It's a way, like, men, of course, can have as many of those marriages they want. Women can only have one and need to have space in between of 2 months. It was shortly before the Green Revolution. And I remember that we sat down and said, okay, we need to bring this idea, this crazy idea of these brutal laws in a way that touches upon the Austrian humor. And then we had this, like, I think, 5,000 condoms produced with the rules of what happens to you if you have sexual intercourse outside of marriage in Iran, which was very harsh. And we distributed it in universities. And I remember that you said, like, we need to use humor for that topic because otherwise nobody is going into the cinema. And it worked well as well. How is your approach in, like, creating materials around films? As you said, like, now it's more online. Back then it was more printed.
We produce very, very few printed material anymore. So sometimes we make just some, it depends on which kind of audiences we have in the screen, but it's when I produce something, then more that the people can take something with them after they've seen the film to carry it away and share it afterwards. I use the budgets to bring the people in the audience mainly online meanwhile. At the moment the media is Instagram mainly, and some other, depending again on the specific target groups, where can you find your audiences, and there we lead the money. And we normally now are using specific companies and PR groups who are specialized in that. I'm meanwhile completely lost, so since I'm producing, I'm doing not the campaigns. I let consult myself by organizations like very nice partners are Happy Together, for instance, a French social media company. They are doing excellent campaigns, and this works quite well. But I'm just doing the briefings, and then I let them do the job online.
But do you produce material during the shooting? Is there like a back thought?
Yes, of course. We organize. We try to support and have collected a lot of making of material and start early to to have the stills and to document the process, everything, and so that in any time we are ready to present the film in the best way. It's starting while production, if we are going to a forum, to a work in progress speech and so on, that we have at the right time a teaser and so on. This is then still within the film community. But the best is to collect these materials, to have everything ready when you then want to start to promote the film to the public audiences.
And I mean, I'm saying that for like nearly 20 years now, but if you're a filmmaker, please, please, please organize high-resolution photos of your projects. It's like the worst thing. Festivals, anyone, we really need materials to work with, because otherwise we can't communicate your film. And sometimes you have only like these tiny, tiny pictures, which is then you want to make a nice poster wall, and then you're like, oh no, and this film not.
Have the right pictures who are telling the story in one picture is very, very difficult.
Yes, a good picture, a good title is halfway to the audience. It needs to be funny, captivating, shocking, explaining. I think take time for that also in like looking at your audience, analyzing it, and then thinking of what could fit with them. In particular with the first photo, because that's the
key visuals are the basis. If you don't have good key visuals, you can forget about the rest, because even an NGO will not be interested in your project if they don't understand it within 5 seconds.
Yes.
Hello. Yeah. Yeah, going back to the digital part, for what have helped us until now is that we also do brain trust.
Do you want? I know you, but I don't know if everyone else knows you. Do you like want to say one sentence about you and your project you are working on?
Filmmaker working in a documentary about lithium extraction in Chile and Serbia, and we'll talk in an hour here as well. Yeah, yeah, brain trust. Important to do it also with a lot of, yes, of the funders or possible funders that you might have. So you gather all of them and you show them the impact campaign, but you don't just invite the people who decide on the funds, but also the communication team, because then you will know what they are going to be working in the next 2 years, and then you can apply and find new audiences or kind of shift a bit the campaign, the digital campaign as well, because then they can produce the things, you decentralize things. You know, you don't produce it yourself, but the funders, and then you have a kind of like an agreement of how the campaign it is and how you want to do it. So a brain trust before finishing the documentary maybe, and after as well, can help a lot.
I think that's a very valid point you're making. In general, what I've seen is test screenings, bringing in other people and listening to them, what they are telling you about your film, is also, if you're in a distribution process, like a test screening for your audience, trying the poster, the still, and even if you don't have the funds to do like a big test screening, inviting your friends and family, showing them the film, asking them about the poster, if it works or not, is very useful, because sometimes I have the feeling people are so deep and so much in love with the film, which is beautiful, that you don't see the obvious which is from the outside.
Yeah, it's always important to collect the feedbacks from when you're in the finishing process, after rough cut, final cut, and post-production of a film. You're already in the topic for a couple of years, so it's impossible that you can see the film with fresh eyes. And most of the time, the overall general debate on the topic, no matter what you're doing, has changed since the start. You've started to work on the project, and then it's very important to define the relation, or what can be the overall story or the approach to reach the audiences, and so having feedback from some people who see the film for the very, very first time before you start to work on the material in detail for distribution is always very, very helpful, because otherwise it will be very easy that you make big mistakes in how to address the topic, and maybe the people will just not understand what you're talking about, because some things are too normal for you, but not for the general audience.
Yeah. Is there any other question? Last chance? Yes. There's the mic. No.
Hi. Yeah, I appreciate this conversation a lot, and I agree with 99% of what you're saying, and it's really interesting. However, I want to ask about one maybe slightly critical point of this. So when you're talking about organized audiences and building these organized audiences, do you see that there's also a slight chance that we are distributing and watching documentary films more and more within our own political and social bubbles, instead of bringing them to people who are not, so to speak, convinced yet of, you know, what we perceive as the good? Yeah.
That's a very important, like breaking the bubble.
Yes, we do. It's very much is preaching to the already convinced, which is still important. We need to keep this going, and if we don't do that, people would be frustrated very soon. So this is important, but it's not enough. And we, of course, have to try to reach out and find new audiences. And again, most of the time it's a kind of combination. So a typical event is that we have maybe in a cinema somewhere 50 pre-saled tickets for existing audiences, and then we try to use that to make the cinema full with new audiences sometimes. And I would love to establish a new format. It's just an idea. I don't know if I will ever have the capacity to organize it. Having combined tickets to have, because we have now a screening in the cinema, then a Q&A, and then the people are leaving, and I would like to combine it with having then an event in a restaurant with hosted tables to make the next step and coming into action with new audiences and new people, and making film as a starting point to really get access to new environments, social environments. And so this is a more theory, an idea at the moment, but this is something I'm currently thinking about, if this could find a form that it works.
So there are also some ideas out there. This afternoon at 5 we are going to talk with Fredrik Gerten. Fredrik is a Swedish filmmaker, and he inspired us, for example, because he founded in Sweden something called Doc Launch, where he's working with club promoters and is showing documentaries in clubs all over Sweden. He's the reason why we are doing the X launch. So, for example, tonight we are showing in Berlin's one of the most well-known clubs a film, and people by now know that if they have the ticket for the film, they can stay in the club. So no queuing, no. So yes, and we have different audiences than in the cinema for that. The second approach, we, for example, as a festival are trying to take, I mean, being at Potsdamer Platz as a documentary film festival and like having the space in a shopping center might seem weird, because like documentaries often seem like more and off, which I personally love as surroundings. But our idea this year was, okay, let's go to a shopping center, let's use the public space there, do screenings for children for free in the food area, which is not my personally favorite area in the world. But maybe we have people who have never been in touch with documentaries, or children who have only seen like Supersonic or others, and then get them involved. very early on. And like, I think also public screenings, I've learned at Doc Munich, screenings they do for free in parks with documentaries, with a bicycle that just goes there. And those things are so important next to the regular thing. And I think a last word.
Yeah, Doc Leipzig is showing a film every day in the train station, for instance.
I'm working on that.
Yeah.
Not made Berlin
and
bringing
the films to the open air summer cinemas to have the slots for documentary film there. And we need to do much more work, advocacy work, to have curated slots in public media, in the public TV, because, for instance, it's in Austria, how the public broadcaster ORF is dealing documentary in Austria in the last few years is it's just a shame. It's really, they are more and more formatted. It's just always it need to be a host from a known face from Austria telling the story. No creative documentaries. We are losing the slots to show the films. The budgets are declining and so on. And this is the same thing in Greece. 2 months ago, the separate channel for documentary was just changed from one day to the other, and they are now showing sports. And so on. So the documentary film in public media is really under threat, and we have to do more advocacy work to keep the spaces in the public dialogue we already had, to keep that alive, and to be self-consciousness to say that it's important for democracy.
And I would take that not as a downer, that everything is going bad, but as like a fighting announcement that we need to join forces and keep documentary alive together. So you're now very much invited to join the next session, I think at 12:30. It will be super interesting. And then in the afternoon, as I said, it's not in the program, but at 5 we have a conversation with Fredrik Gärtner about film and impact again, but from a very different perspective. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.